Good morning, 8 Green students. Today we are going to talk about the Bill of Rights. So if you remember back when we were creating the Constitution, the Anti-Federalists, one of their arguments against the U.S. Constitution was that it did not have a Bill of Rights. Once the Constitution was ratified by 9 of the 13 states, James Madison got to work on creating a list of freedoms or liberties, privileges, rights, whatever word you want to use, that the American citizens would have. And he got all the suggestions. If you remember back, I think he got like 200 suggestions. They narrowed down to 12. They sent those 12 amendments to the states. Remember, states have to ratify constitutional amendments. That was just on your quiz that you took yesterday, hopefully. And the states approved 10 of these amendments. So here we go. And some amendments have multiple parts to them. For example, the First Amendment. First Amendment is considered by many folks to be the most important one. It grants us freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to peacefully or peaceable assembly. Okay, this is protest. So what happened at the Capitol building a few weeks back is not protected by the First Amendment because it wasn't peaceful, or as the terminology they used, peaceable assembly. And then the right to petition your government. This means you can write petitions or have verbal petitions of things that you want changed. So that's the First Amendment. Amendment 2, this is always controversial every election year. The Second Amendment allows private citizens to have the right to bear arms or own guns. Another word for guns is arms, so we're not talking about these arms. Arms meaning guns. And then another part of the Second Amendment is states can organize their own militia, and today we call that the National Guard. Amendment 3. Remember back when we were studying the Road to Revolution, and one of the laws that Great Britain passed against the colonists was the Quartering Act? Well, the Founding Fathers and the American citizens wanted to make sure that that didn't happen again. And so there is no quartering of soldiers in homes during times of peace. So the U.S. government cannot require you to house and feed military soldiers during times of peace. Now, if we were in open war here on our soil, somebody was invading us and they needed to use your home as a station or a fort, then I think the government could technically ask for that, but that's never happened. Amendment 4, protection from unlawful search and seizures of property. Okay, this is where you've probably heard of, where the police want to search someone's home or search their car. They have to have a search warrant or what's called probable cause. Okay, they have to believe that some sort of crime, they have to have evidence that a crime is being committed in order to search your property without a proper search warrant. And this goes back to also the Road to Revolution and the writs of assistance. Okay, and they wanted to make sure that those British writs of assistance, something like that wasn't used again on the American people. So no unlawful search and seizure. If you notice, Amendments 2, 3, and 4 all deal with something that happened when we were under the British Empire. The right to bear arms, okay, we wanted to make sure that we could arm ourselves against a tyrannical government. No quartering of soldiers, no unlawful search and seizures. All three of those relate directly back to the Road to Revolution. All right, Amendment 5. So Amendment 5 has 4 parts to it, and I've highlighted those parts in red font. Probably the most famous one is you can plead the Fifth. Okay, pleading the Fifth, and you're pleading the Fifth because it's the Fifth Amendment. Pleading the Fifth means you do not have to testify against yourself in a trial. So if you're on trial for a crime, you do not have to take the stand. Okay, you can plead the Fifth. Fifth Amendment also says you cannot be tried twice for the same crime if you've been found not guilty. Okay, so if I was to rob a bank and get arrested for it and go to trial for it and they found me not guilty, and then the next day video evidence showed up that proved I did it, I could not be tried again for that particular crime. Now, if I robbed another bank, then I could be charged with that one and tried for that crime. But this was a way to keep the courts from continuously going after somebody after they'd been found not guilty in a court of law. Due process, the Fifth Amendment deals with due process. It just means that certain legal processes have to be followed, and if there's anything where you feel like your rights were violated in the course of being arrested or going to trial. A lot of times your lawyer could claim due process was not followed. It's kind of a generic term. And then the fourth one is called eminent domain. And this means that the government can acquire your property as long as they pay you a fair market price. Okay, they can't take it from you without paying you. They have to pay you. But if they pay you a fair market price for your land and it's going to benefit the greater good, then they can take it. Okay, they can't take your house because they want to put a McDonald's there. Things that eminent domain could be invoked for: putting in a highway, widening a road, putting in maybe a hospital or an airport. If you guys have ever been to the Kansas Speedway and the Legends area and the T-Bones baseball stadium, all that actually, a lot of property that was in that area. I grew up about 5 miles from there, and it was acquired through eminent domain. And although none of that stuff is necessary, because it's all entertainment stuff, it was going to create lots of jobs and a huge revenue stream, lots of money for that county, for Wyandotte County. And so it was deemed, that they could force those people basically out of their homes. I actually had a friend from high school who lived basically where turn 3 of the Kansas Speedway is right now. So eminent domain, they have to pay you a fair market price, but if it's something that can benefit the entire good, then they can do it. Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment deals with rights of the accused. So if you've been accused of a crime, number one, you have the right to know what charges are against you. It's called habeas corpus. You have the right to appear before a judge and have the rights read to you what you're being charged with. You have the right to a fair and speedy criminal trial. Okay, if you're accused of a crime, they can't hold you in jail for years before taking you to trial. You have the right to be provided a lawyer. If you can pay for one for yourself, great. If not, the government will provide you one. It's called a public defender. You have the right to question witnesses who are testifying against you. If the prosecution has somebody who says they saw you commit a crime, your lawyer has the right to question those witnesses. And likewise, on the flip side, you have a right to bring witnesses in on your own behalf. So maybe you have an alibi for the crime in question, and your lawyer can bring those witnesses in and have them testify on your behalf. Amendment 7. So this deals with a civil trial. Civil means between two civilians. Criminal, you've committed a crime. Civil are two people who are suing each other. Okay, so think medical malpractice, car accident, one person suing the other, things like that. And if the damages exceed a certain dollar amount, you can have a jury trial. When the Founding Fathers created this, the number was $20. Today, that number, I believe, is $10,000. So if you're suing somebody for $10,000 or more, then you can request a jury trial. If it's under that dollar amount, then it's going to be what's called a bench trial, and that's where you present your case, the other person presents their case, and the judge makes a decision. The judge sitting at the bench is what they call that. So that's called a bench trial. But if it's over a certain amount, then you can get a jury trial, which is where you'd have other civilians make the decision for you on who's right and who's wrong. Amendment 8 has two parts to it. First, no excessive bail. So when you're arrested and taken to jail, a lot of times you can post bail, which means you can pay money to get out, and then you appear back in court for your trial date. Okay, and if you've ever played Monopoly and if you get sent to jail, you know that I think you can pay $50 to, you can either roll doubles or pay $50 and get out of jail. So no excessive bail. What that means is the bail has to fit the crime. So if I'm charged with shoplifting, okay, they're not going to hold me and make me pay, $5,000 bail for shoplifting, $150 AirPods or something. So again, and sometimes you can be held without bail. If you've committed murder, something awful like that, and maybe you're a flight risk, meaning they think you might try to escape the country or skip town and not show up for your trial, they can deny you bail. But they can't have excessive bail. And no cruel and unusual punishment. This goes back to the old eye for an eye philosophy. It used to be way back, thousands of years ago, maybe not even that long, maybe just hundreds of years ago. There was the old, if you steal, you get your hand chopped off, okay? Not going to happen. If I steal something from Best Buy or Target or wherever, I'm not going to get my hand chopped off. Not in America. There's no cruel and unusual punishment. If I get arrested for, I don't know, let me think of something here. Well, let's go back to shoplifting again. I get arrested for shoplifting and I'm convicted because I'm on film, I'm on camera shoplifting. They're not going to sentence me to 30 years in prison. Okay. So the punishment has to fit the crime. Amendment 9. So this is kind of a generic amendment that basically says we the people have more rights than what are listed in the U.S. Constitution. Okay, we're not limited to only what is stated in the Constitution and in these first 8 amendments. So, and I'm kind of summarizing here, this is my own wording, but basically what the founding fathers wanted, they wanted to have an amendment that they could go to in case someone's rights were being violated, and those rights weren't specifically protected in the Constitution or any of the other amendments. They could kind of look to the 9th Amendment as kind of a catch-all to help them out in that situation. So basically, you have more rights than what are listed specifically in the Constitution. Number 10. This is called the Reserved Powers Amendment. You guys just took a quiz yesterday over delegated, concurrent, and reserved powers. So anything not specifically given to the federal government is reserved to the states. So that's why states control marriage licenses, elections, local education, hunting and fishing licenses, local corporations and businesses, trade within a state, okay? Anything that the federal government is not granted specific powers to automatically goes to the states. So that's the Reserved Powers Amendment. So those are the first 10 amendments. That's our Bill of Rights. Now I've got one more slide that I want to share with you. This next slide, none of that stuff is going to be on your assignment, but I think it's important to look at some of this. So we have had 27 total amendments. So we had the first 10, which I just went over, and we've had 17 others since then. So a total of 27. Those first 10, those count. That counts in the 27. They just were all put in at the same time. That's why they're special and called the Bill of Rights. Some other major amendments over the years. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment are called the post-Civil War amendments. And so we had the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. We'll talk about that later in the school year. 14th Amendment made all black Americans legal citizens. We'll talk about that. And the 15th Amendment gave all black males the right to vote. And we'll talk about that. So those three, also they're called the Reconstruction Amendments. Reconstruction is the time period after the Civil War. So those are your major Reconstruction Amendments. Obviously, the 13th Amendment, super, super important, especially in early American history. 19th Amendment, yay, we gave women the right to vote. And how awesome is it? We have a female vice president. That certainly would not have been possible had it not been for the 19th Amendment, even granting women the right to vote. But you'll notice there, black males, former slaves, were given the right to vote in 1870. Women of any color were not given the right to vote until 1920. So there was a 50-year gap there where all men could vote, but women could not. The 22nd Amendment limited the term of president to 2 terms. Prior to that, Franklin D. Roosevelt had been elected to 4 terms of office. Now, he only served 3 of those. He ended up passing away right at the beginning of his 4th term, which is when Harry Truman took over, Harry Truman from Independence, Missouri. And then after that, they decided that maybe 4 terms was too many for any one person. Not that FDR did anything wrong at all, but I think it just made some people nervous that somebody could get in power and stay in power for a long time. So they limited it to 2 terms. And then during the Vietnam War, we lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. And the reason we did that is we'd already been fighting in Vietnam for a few years. I think, maybe 3 or 4 years. And you could be drafted into the military service at the age of 18. You could be forced to go fight and die for your country at the age of 18, but you couldn't vote for your leaders until you were 21. And that made 0 sense. If you could be forced to go fight and die for your country, you should be able to vote for the leaders of your country. So they lowered the voting age to 18. So there you go. There are your Bill of Rights, 10 amendments with some extras added on at the end. Have a great day.